Well, welcome back to Krown's Crypto Cave, and a very important day today. Actually, not necessarily because of what is expected to happen today within the good old markets, but because of what actually happened yesterday, and it is a major setup for this next week, and most especially April to come. So with all of that said, I would like to wish you the best and the haps of the happiest, and let's get into it right now as we focus on the Krown Chain application, which, by the way, can be found at app.krownchain.net. It is 100% free. There's a link in the description below as well, so go and claim your free account if you so desire. Anyways, with that said, what can we see over here on the dashboard right now? We do see Bitcoin dominance still hanging around that 59.5% region, of which I am still looking at about a reversal on there, which is actually going to fit into the long-term narrative of what we're going to be talking about today. However, I do want to overlay some conditions for that as well, looking at the major Bitcoin pairings. Anyways, Fear and Greed Index also popping up significantly from yesterday to today, more than 10 points, after we did have pretty much a reset all the way down to the neutral-ish region, now bounced back up into the slightly optimistic territory, if you want to call it that. On top of that, we do see open interest more or less kind of oscillating around the same region, of which we did see, more importantly, a breakdown of open interest for about 2 billion, I believe it was, just above 11 billion high for the ultimate high of Bitcoin a couple weeks ago, or about a week and a half ago, whatever the fuck it was, and now coming down to about 9.5 billion, which means, or which would imply alongside current price action structure, that it is essentially longs and boolas running the price right now. So with that in mind, I'm going to have to put away my sermons to bear Jesus for a little bit of time, and let's go look at, let's go look at the market data over here. I'm just curious if there's anything more specific. Yes, okay, yes, the funny rate right here as well. Again, we've been seeing this naturally come down. Well, maybe not so naturally, but more importantly, trending down ever since January highs back on over here. And again, this is more or less playing into the long-term narrative that Bitcoin is setting in a major base somewhere around this region. The question is, does Bitcoin make another run back towards or back down maybe a little bit lower than 50,000 bucks, or does Bitcoin just continue onwards and upwards from here? On top of that, we do see that the funny rate, most importantly, for the last few days, we've been saying a lot of this, that if we see a negative funny rate alongside, especially backwardation in futures versus spot price action, which we actually quite see literally the opposite right now, so fair enough, but that is, traditionally your pretty obvious sign of major reversal. Anyways, just having this alone alongside a more sentiment-based indicator like this, the Fear and Greed Index, again, don't really want to be using these things on their own, but combined together alongside the funny rate and open interest reads, I do look at this as overall good, and Bitcoin very likely setting in a big base around the $55,000 level, regardless of whether they're looking for, a couple $1,000 move below or even, greater move than that. And this is, again, going to be a major player into the monthly close and also the quarterly close coming up on Wednesday. So with all of that said, you're actually quite literally getting paid to hold your longs on OKX and Huobi right now, and actually even Deribit for the current period, and everyone else is pretty much inconsequential. BitMEX 0.01%, Binance same, Bybit pretty much 0, and FTX the only one kind of out there right now, but it typically is an outlier. And most importantly with this, again, I do look at this as more or less a good thing for the long-term Bitcoin Boolah's case. Anyways, the only thing that's a little bit concerning to me is the major premiums that we see on futures over spot price action. That likely does play into a little bit of a narrative of a short-term pullback here. But with that said, now let's go to the charts themselves. And actually, before we do that, should we follow up on yesterday's short-term time frame analysis? Yeah, fuck it. All right, we'll do that. So yesterday we did say that Bitcoin very likely to play out a nice upside move in the short term based off of the regular bullish divergence of 1, 2, 3 drives on CME charts right here, the most obvious one of them all. That actually led up, obviously, to that targeted region anywhere above, like, I think it was 54 to 55,000 bucks. Obviously, we've seen a high of just above 55,000 bucks thus far. But now with the advent of that and the closure that we did see on yesterday's daily, the 12 hours actually going to have some hidden bullish divergence here now too, I believe, on CME. Yes, indeed it does. So looking at that right there, actually would very likely extend this run coming into next week. Of course, it should be denoted that Bitcoin does still have lower highs right here as long as we're below about 56,500. Of course, nothing's changed there, but we are starting to really see some major signs of potential reversal around this region. This could be accompanied by, although it's not necessarily there right now, but it could be accompanied by a TSI bullish cross as well. Here's the thing though, because we don't have the next open, we don't actually have the next period right here. So while it does say 62,500, I expect it to come down significantly on the next open that you see, and obviously even more than that on the open that comes after that. And seeing as it is right around the zero read right now, that typically is an inflection point. So if things are going to continue onwards and upwards from here, there is actually a pretty damn good setup with the hidden bullish divergence again on the 12-hour that was precipitated by the regular bullish divergence on the 4-hour that we identified yesterday. And I might be changing my narrative here now, where Bitcoin I was bullish on yesterday short term, and then likely looking for a pullback based upon the medium terms. In fact, well, actually, we could still probably look for that over the weekend. If it happens over the weekend, that's going to be the most obvious fucking trade. I'll just say that straight up, to be honest with you. But what I'm going to show you now really leads me to believe that Bitcoin is extremely likely to put in a base somewhere around this $50,000 level. Again, whether it comes down, a little bit below 50,000 bucks, as I was, as I was kind of looking at and or more or less hoping for this past week, I don't think that that's all that relevant for the long term. What I want to show you right now is most importantly what we see on SPY futures and the way that traditional markets closed at the end of Friday. Again, the end of the weekly close, massive run up, massive continuation. What do we see? Another higher low as far as the higher term timeframes go, like our daily and weekly. We did get our targets met down to 38.50. But the response on this is so fucking phenomenal that it's very difficult for this not to be. I mean, there's nothing fucking bearish about this. This is the problem. And seeing as these markets are more or less correlated, and Jesus, now that I go to a weekly, we literally have a bullish engulfing dildo at the highs on new all-time highs. Extremely likely to get continuation to new all-time highs coming into this next week, and obviously this next month, of which the monthly is looking incredibly girthy right now. I mean, that is powerful AF, and the quarterly I imagine to be even more strong, structurally speaking. And yes, indeed, that's exactly what we do see. So I really, really like this setup coming into next week, and that is what kind of is leading me to believe that Bitcoin likely does follow in its footsteps. Now, of course, over the weekend, I am very hesitant to make these sorts of more like long-term analysis, especially in confluence with traditional markets, because they're not trading over the weekend. And traditionally the weekend is, well, usually when I don't trade, because a lot of floaty and flighty price action typically happens, and I don't really want a piece of it. I feel like technical analysis as kind of like a base edge, generally speaking, is a lot less efficacious over the weekend. There's a lot more games played, as there's a lot less players in the game, and it's just easy to kind of run the markets, if you're like even a medium tier quant firm in that regard. Anyways, we go over here and check out Dow Jones. Same thing, closing on new all-time highs for the daily as well. Weekly strong as fuck, another massive engulfing dildo, and there you go. And then on top of that, NASDAQ certainly the laggard within this one, but holding above the 21 exponential moving average when it had several chances to break below on the last pretty much whole month of price action, I do look at as more or less of a good thing. Now we can go back down to lower term timeframes over here, and it looks like I am going to be wrong about my targets for a little bit lower price action, down to about 12.3 to 12.4. So I will be wrong on that one. To be fair, though, NASDAQ still is a little bit, well, I wouldn't say a little bit, it's still very much questionable here, because we do quite literally have a downturn on short and medium term timeframes, and, well, even the daily as well. But with the way that SPY and Dow Jones are looking like, it's looking like continuation, and very likely does try to put in a low right here, and I imagine that is actually not accompanied by any divergences, which is not the best sign. And while the TSI did have a chance to have a bearish cross on yesterday close, it did not get it, which is, somewhat of a good sign as well. So I would say that with the majority of them, that being SPY and Dow Jones, still kind of heading upwards and onwards, I would be looking at that as a really, really good sign. We can also look at the mid caps here too with IWM, and what do you know? It looks like a nice little reversal to me. Now, technically speaking, this one actually did have a little bit of a lower low right there, but being the mid caps is a little bit less important, especially for what we're looking at right now. So with that said, I actually really do like that as a setup for next week, not necessarily today or tomorrow over the weekend. As like I said, a lot of the time, actually the opposite will happen over the weekend. In this case, I think it would be really fucking obvious, incredibly fucking obvious, in fact, if Bitcoin played out a short-term downside move here, especially down to like 51,000 bucks or 52,000 bucks, that would be an extremely likely area for a bouncy bounce region, and very likely, puts in a solid base around that region as well. What I'm talking about here and how this will kind of work into the monthly and quarterly close, most importantly, is what we're seeing right around here. Let me go to a little more long-term chart, and what we can see on the quarterly, we can use BLX index for this one. What we see on the quarterly is that the topside Toronto band is going to be acting as a bit of a basing for the next 3 months of price action, as it has been in the past prior rallies, right? You do see once it starts closing above over here, that is essentially your base as Bitcoin does continue onwards and upwards during its strong trending moves. And this is, just general knowledge for the Toronto bands, not necessarily like specific to Bitcoin on a quarterly. Obviously, it's going to be a lot more obvious on a monthly where you have more price action history. But as it stands right now, we did see the topside Toronto band from October to January rise up about 50% from 20,000 bucks right here in October to January of almost 34,000 bucks right there. So a pretty damn big increase. So it would be relevant to say that assuming that Bitcoin closes basically anywhere here or higher, or just anywhere above 50,000 bucks, we could probably look for a similar increase coming into the month or the next quarterly starting on Wednesday, that is. And that would imply that Bitcoin would have a major base, probably somewhere around about 50,000 bucks where that number would be coming in. And that is pretty much where Bitcoin is trying to put in, a major low on, like, let's call it the daily right now, which, by the way, I should talk about this for a second. It's very interesting to me, or it's not that it's interesting to me. I think it's very telling that we see on CME, Bitcoin on the daily is not in a downtrend. On spot price action, technically yes, that's your high, that's your low, that's your this kind of like a slew of lower highs right here, and that's obviously a lower low right here. We don't see the same thing on CME. And CME chart I do favor overall. When push comes to shove, 99% of the time CME chart's going to be right. Maybe not 99, but like 90% of the time. The vast majority of the time is going to be right. And in this case right here, we actually don't even have a downtrend on the daily. We have higher lows as long as Bitcoin's essentially above 45,000 bucks right here. So with all of that in mind, do I still think that it's possible for Bitcoin to come down, a little bit below 50,000 bucks, maybe like 49,000 bucks? Yeah, I think it would be pretty damn obvious area, especially for like at the very least a multi-thousand big bounce. Could it be a long-term reversal area as well? Could be, but I do think, now that I'm over here, Caretaker's RSI is actually denoting this as a confirmed local low, and on top of that, hidden bullish divergence on the other side. Although, why would it just change right there? It should not be trading at all right now. That's very strange. Anyways, daily and 12 hour obviously going to be about the same, and that will have natural targets back up about 55,500 to 56,000 bucks. And here's the thing: if Bitcoin can take out the last lower high right here, which is on a closing basis for a 12 hour, is about 56,500 on CME. On spot price action, it's going to be about 56 and some odd change, 56,300 right here. Sorry, no. It's about the same actually. Closing price is, hold on. Yeah, 56.5 we'll call it. Then you actually have a reversal on your short and medium term timeframes as well. So with all of that said, if those two things come into confluence with each other, especially if Bitcoin just, closes like a 4 hour above 56.5, I'd be willing to call that not just a short-term, medium-term reversal, but that likely leads into long-term continuation based off of our continuation of momentum on that higher low structure, especially for CME. Looking into the monthly, bringing it all together, that's going to set in a base even higher and higher. And of course, we still do have that same sort of interplay that I've been looking for on the monthly, very much available here too. Remember, we only have about 4 days left in the trading month. Let me double check. One, including today, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But weekend kind of doesn't really count, to be honest with you. Anyways, we have pretty much always seen anytime that Bitcoin closes the monthly above the top side Toronto band, that the top side of the Toronto band will be naturally testing the bottom side of that month's low. In this case, you can, back test this all the way over here. Anytime that Bitcoin's, trending above, it at the very least tests the bottom or side, the top side of the Toronto band, sometimes a little bit off, but pretty fucking close regardless. And in this case right here, Bitcoin, if it closes somewhere around here, it actually won't really be that close. But you can imagine when we saw it earlier in the month at around 58,000 bucks, it was pretty much right on the monthly low thus far. So that condition has been met just about 100% of the time for Bitcoin in the 11, almost 12-year history now of this asset. So I would say that it's it's pretty dependable edge in this case. And most importantly, with that, it offers up a little bit of a narrative for points of failure, and it would essentially be a little more on the Bulaw's case, because you can only get that test one of two ways. You can either get so fucking green here that it gets pulled up to the bottom of your current monthly dildo, or Bitcoin quite literally comes down. And again, this is a reactive indicator, so it will naturally change alongside current price action, and it'd be somewhere around like low 40,000 bucks. Do I think that Bitcoin's going to low 40,000 bucks before the end of the month? Unlikely, honestly, to be quite honest with you. Again, based off of everything that we just kind of spoke about. Short term, do I think Bitcoin still has some downside? I would, if Bitcoin has some downside in the short term, more importantly, I'd look at that as a major opportunity. Anywhere down around 51 to 51.5, around this last little local low right here, is going to be an obvious weekend trade, in my opinion, for that sort of counter move to the current reversal that's going on. And again, it's the focus on traditional markets right now that really is helping out my bias for looking for essentially further upside. So with all of that in mind, I mean, to kind of wrap up this last week, we basically saw the measure move from this breakdown happen all the way down to about 51.5, and Bitcoin bouncing off and can put in a bit of a base there. But this is also around the 2-spot Fibonacci extension, so I do like this just as a structural base. Of course, that's going to be giving Bitcoin a higher low on CME chart, and even if Bitcoin did break below this region, it's pretty obvious with the nice and orderly horizontals coming around this region. Basically, as long as Bitcoin's closing 4-hour dildos above, let's call it 51,500, basically this last lower low right, this last low right here, I don't really look for any continuation of the downside. With that in mind, if Bitcoin does break below it, I would be targeting moves basically to the same areas that I was kind of postulating at the end of this prior week at about 48 to 49,000 bucks. But for right now, obviously level by level, you got to take one by one. In this case, it does look like Bitcoin might have a little bit of short-term downside. I would actually be a lot more skeptical if Bitcoin actually took off from here and printed a higher high over the weekend. That would actually be a little bit more concerning, to be honest with you. But for right now, it does look like short-term timeframes probably going to be a little bit of a pulley back. We do see that hourly is kind of grinding up against the against the 200 simple right here, and it is essentially just following this nice little downtrend. Now, I'm obviously not a big fan of diagonals, but in this case, it's worth calling out. It's basically just your trend. It's basically just your lower highs. That's all that it is. Represented geometrically. Fucking wrong English, obviously. But more importantly with this, do we see some bearish divergence on the hourly right now? Actually, we do. And funnily enough, just as an aside, I actually find that the hourly is a pretty good time frame on the weekends. I don't know what it is, but the hourly seems to be better than like most other time frames on the weekend if you are insistent on trading, which I am not myself. Again, for full disclosure, I do not trade over the weekends unless if it's like a super fucking obvious thing. In this case right now, what would be a super obvious thing? Coming back down around this week's low would be an obvious thing for me. 51.5, give or take about $500 from that target. I would be interested. Now, it should also be to note of this. Remember that trend line that we identified on the 4-hour for the TSI yesterday? Let me just get rid of everything that's not that trend line. Okay, get out, and get off this one as well. This one's officially been broken as well, so I do like that. Now, of course, I do want to see this get above the zero read, but I'd imagine that any sort of a closure above that next local high at 56.5, then that probably does get met as well. And guess what? You can almost, well, it's not going to be happening right here. This is naturally going to come down, though. It's currently 59.4, but with each and every passing close, it's going to be coming down quite a fair bit. Anyways, okay, cool. So that would just imply some time being spent within this region. Anyways, with that said, I don't want to make this video too long today because I think that this is, I mean, we're kind of just repeating a lot of the information from this from this week's like general disposition. Let's go over here and check out some caretaker ranges, as I have been referring to them a lot more recently. 4 hours getting like the greater range, but that's not gonna be too helpful over the weekend. Probably need to go to an hourly for the weekend, and let's see what we got right here. Yes, indeed. 56 to the upside versus 52 to the downside. So kind of bracketing that region right there, more or less in confluence with what I'm looking at. And again, as long as Bitcoin's kind of below that $56,000 territory, Bitcoin still does have those lower highs. So with all that said, over the weekend, if I had to call it right now, if you put a gun to my head, which I would not really appreciate, but if you did, I'd be looking for some downside over the weekend. It's kind of like the opposite of yesterday, like short-term downside, medium-term upside, and then long-term upside. So I guess that's not opposite, but between the short and medium time frames kind of switched around right there. Again, mostly based off of the way that we see traditional markets closing for last week leading into this next month, which is really, 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 really important and powerful stuff. Anyways, check out Bitcoin dominance really. I want to see what that one's looking like here. Let's see. Okay, so I still do look at this as likely putting in a base around this region. As long as I see all these wicks within this region, that is going to be indicative of likely getting accumulation. Now, of course, you can't, like, this is more or less an index more than anything else. So it's not like an actual accumulation, but around the whole altcoin sphere, I'd expect to see, massive downtrends or likely putting in like major highs right now. So I'm going to go to what I typically refer to as the altcoin index, which is Mr. Buterol. And what is this one? This one's actually like barely holding on to its lows. If anything, it would be on the other side. Going to be fighting off a death cross relatively soon too. So it's not going to be happening actually, at least for like another week and a half to 2 weeks. So it's definitely a potential, but as long as you're below 0.032, it will naturally be inevitable. So if it can maintain below that region for the next like week and a half, then yeah, I'd be massively bearish on this, looking for a move back down to like 2.5 million satoshis. But a little bit too early to be talking about that, to be honest with you. And I'd actually be expecting this one to be putting in like a local high right now if this one is going to come down long term. This one's just been down actually long term. Let's go check out maybe Litecoin. If this one's bullish, then you know that the whole fucking market's bullish. Nope, this one's continuation of the downside, clear breakdown. It's almost at the full retrace. We've been looking for a full retrace ever since literally this level over here in August 2019, and a couple years later, looks like we're probably gonna get it. But again, this is not really indicative of all altcoins. Like hashtag not all altcoins, right? But looking at, I'm curious what like Ripple's doing. Yeah, it still looks like shit on the lows, to be honest with you, versus Bitcoin versus US dollar. It's actually okay. Do I have another one over here that I can quickly reference? Usually don't look at too many altcoin Bitcoin pairings, to be honest with you, but it does seem to me that the market really is maturing, however, and like we are seeing serious bifurcation between the altcoins that probably going to just become irrelevant and the altcoins that are probably here to stay for at least a little bit of time. So with that said, if your altcoin is one of the better actors, that's a pretty damn good sign, especially in this market right now where it's quite difficult to keep up with Bitcoin, in general. Anyways, okay. What else do I want to get through before we call this one? I'm curious what tech sector did on Friday. Yeah, obvious reversal here on the weekly. Obvious reversal here on the daily. All right, we got a higher low. Anywhere above 133, 134 region next week is just going to be massively fucking bullish. Back up to the 136, 137 high. Here's the thing though. What about financial sector? Actually, this one's clearly still good. So fair enough on that one. Here's what GameStop's looking like. Still looking like a piece of shit. Might still be a piece of shit. Is it a piece of shit? Still kind of fighting it off a little bit, but this one's going to take its time. I don't think that's going to be resolved anytime soon. Anyways, my point is that, short term, again, over the weekend, probably going to be looking like a little bit of downside, maybe comes back down like 50, 51 and a half, 52. I'd absolutely love that myself. But I believe that this is a major setup for the week to come. And the only way that I really start to look back down towards those $40,000 to $49,000 targets is basically if this level is broken right here on, at the very least, a 4-hour closure. If I'm going to be using $52,000, if I'm using a 2-hour, I'd be using 51.5. We'll call it, 51.5 would be my big area. But for right now, it just looks like a little bit of short-term downside. Probably bases again on this blue box, and then gives another try to the upside. Is what it looks like to me. I really like the way that SPY closed on that one. That's kind of an obvious signal right there. I guess I have a couple more Bitcoin pairings over here. Cardano looks like shit, actually, but that's on the 2-hour. What does the daily look like? Daily looks okay. Daily looks not so bad, actually. In fact, daily looks pretty fucking bullish, getting a bullish TSI cross right there. What about Link BTC? Looks like garbage, actually. Looks very bad. So yeah, we're actually seeing a lot of bifurcation here. And I would not expect to see Link on the losers list. Link looks like it wants to come back down for the row of death, back down to about, just below 40,000 Satoshis, perhaps. Would I be looking for a base there though? Yeah, maybe. At the very least, a bounce off that region, but looking pretty shitty right now. Could I be wrong on this one? Yeah, if we take out last week's high, I'd be looking for another rally back up big time to like 60,000 plus Satoshis, but I don't think that's what's happening here. This one looks pretty beat up, very beat up. In fact, anyways, is there anything that I want to say on to talk about a little bit more? Yeah, let's try to keep this video a little bit more on the shorter side. I don't think that there's too much more pertinent things that I want to be talking about. I mean, the ranges are more or less the same as yesterday. That's why I didn't really do the late day wrap up video. Bless you, sir. 56.5 to the upside is your obvious continuation point. To the downside, 51.5 basically on a 2-hour, 4-hour closure on both of them, or just a wick higher above this wick high that you saw on the 24th of March. Again, I don't really have a strong opinion over the weekend. If I did have to have a strong opinion over the weekend, I'd be looking for short-term down, but I'd really be looking for opportunities within this region. Of course, it's not financial advice, I'm not a financial advisor at the end of the day. If Bitcoin does break above 56.5, I mean, I'm just generally going to be bullish back up to $6,000, create a little bit of a range, and then likely continuation on top of that. By the same token, to the downside, I don't really look at this as like a generational breakdown, to be honest with you. Unless if like something severely goes wrong, especially with the traditional markets, major indices that we were looking at earlier. Just my next targeted region would be like 48,000 to 49,000, which is still higher lows on the daily for CME. So with all that said, I'm trying to find something bear. Like what's an obvious bearish thing that I can come up with right now? Need to balance this baby out. What about the weekly? Is the weekly, no, I'm not really giving me too much. 3-day jewel. Okay, the 3-day jewel is the most bearish thing that I can find. 3-day jewel and 2-day jewel still have some pretty nasty signatures within there, but the way to play them is still the same. I don't really look at them as playable just yet. In the more that Bitcoin just kind of holds its own right here, that 3-day will be pulled up as well. So fair enough. That's about as bearish I can get on that one. Do we even have hidden bullish evidence potential on the other side? We do on the 3-day. In fact, between this low and a potential low right here, which is obviously not confirmed, a closure either above the 10 simple on the 3-day or just a wick above last 3-day high at 57.247 would do it for me. And you got to be looking at, or at least I would have to be looking at, moves back onto the prior high at $61,000 and probably even beyond. And that would keep the more immediate continuation hopes alive. I'd still be looking at a $65,000 target to the upside and $69,000 long term. So with that said, I think I'll be shutting off right there. I kind of just expect like a boring sideways day here within this current range. And then if it wants to try a move, probably either late Sunday or early this coming week. And again, it's all really a setup for the monthly and quarterly to come. Anyways, with that said, I do want to wish you well. Do want to wish you the best, and until next time.